Hey guys, good afternoon and welcome to a new episode of Digital Classroom. As you can see, we're not in the studio, but we're actually in our home and we call this place the Pet Cave. So imagine that. Today it's about something else than model photography. And you guys know I love model photography, but there's also another part of photography that I really like, and that's actually street and travel photography. Now, because of course we do a lot of workshops abroad and a lot of shows, we always travel around. And one of the things that I always found very, very disappointing was you flew in somewhere, you went to the trade show, and you flew back, and you didn't actually see anything of the country. So at one point we decided, you know what, we don't take a normal holiday. Every time we do a trade show, we actually connect 1 week extra, and that's our holiday. And it also brings into the equation, of course, that we can do a lot of photography on location, meet a lot of local people. And at one point, I just got addicted to the whole street and travel photography, and I started to do it a little bit more serious. And at one point, of course, you want to get a lot of tips. And I think one of the visits to Jay Meisel's home was for me the big revelation. He taught me so much about street and travel photography and so many tips and tricks that today I want to share some of those tips and tricks with you guys. And of course, a lot of the stuff that I learned by myself by doing it mostly wrong and then trying to do it right. Okay, so let's switch over to our main screen. Now, of course, during the broadcast, as usual, you can ask any question you want. There's absolutely no reason to stay within the topic. You can also ask something about model photography or lighting, and maybe we can incorporate that in the next digital classroom, of course. Now, first of all, of course, Digital Classroom is made possible by a few companies that we really like, and those are also the companies that I already work with for many, many years. And the first one is, of course, BenQ. If you want to make sure that you get a great monitor, great performance and color, BenQ is one of the choices I would highly recommend. Now, if you're living in the European Union, you can always give us an email and we have a 10% discount coupon for you guys, but don't tell anybody else. So BenQ, one of the main reasons, by the way, for BenQ is I'm big on color management and making sure that colors look right. And BenQ has on most monitors a great coating, so you don't have reflections, but they also have hardware calibration inside, and they're very affordable. So it's a great choice. Another company that's been with us from the start is Rogue. Now, you know that in my work I use the Gigoto strobes, and Rogue is without any doubt a product that I can fit on those strobes and be very creative with. And for most of these brands goes like, hey, you know, there are products that are made for photographers and just for the photography market, and there are products designed by photographers for photographers, and those are the products that we try to promote. And Rogue, without any doubt, falls under that category. Now, as you know, I'm shooting tethered in our studio to an iPad, and I really like that because now I don't have to bring my expensive laptop anywhere, and it's more water and wind proof and whatnot more, and you can put it on a stand easy. The software that I'm using is Cascable. Now, you can use Cascable as a subscription or as a one-time buy. And the cool news is, yes, maybe you already know it, but maybe you don't. Cascable just released a brand new version. I've already been playing with it, and it's absolutely awesome. You can now combine apps, put your images not only on the iPad itself, but also on external media. You can now do a lot more stuff with your just assigning apps to open up your images. For example, you can shoot straight into photos, which means you can upload it to the cloud right away. If you need storage on your card, it's no problem at all. You can now actually tell Cascable to only put it on the iPad or leave it on the card and the iPad. Huge update, and make sure you check it out. It's one of my favorite programs on the iPad. Another sponsor for many years is Calibrite. Now you already see the connection, right? Calibrite, BenQ, color management and color accuracy. Calibrite is a brand that's specialized in, for example, the color checkers, but also the color analyzers, making sure that your colors that you see on your screen are actually the right colors. Or not, depending on your retouching style, of course. Another company that we work with a lot, of course, is IQ Wire. Now, you want to shoot tethered in your studio or on location. IQ Wire is without any doubt the brand that I use and promote for the very simple reason they deliver very fast tethering cables in 5 meters, 10 meters and 15 meters without any extra extensions. And that's the problem, you know, those extensions. It's not the cable itself in most cases, it's the extensions that always gives you trouble. So having a company that delivers a 15-meter cable with full speed without any extensions, that's a big plus for me. So that's why we use them. And finally, of course, click backdrops. Now for IQ Wire, Rogue, and actually click backdrops, I have to be totally honest with you guys, we are the distributor in the Netherlands for those brands, but that's not the reason I promote them. It's very simple. I've been using Rogue for 15 years, and only the last 2 years we've been a distributor. So I only promote the brands that we really use, and the brands that we sell, yeah, you figure it out yourself. Those are the brands we absolutely love and use. So, okay, enough of the commercial stuff, but we have to do it right, because those companies make it possible for already 10 years of digital classroom. Imagine that, 10 years, wow, time flies. Okay, so let's go for our street and travel photography. Now, I called it without a net. Now, why do I call it without a net? The reason is pretty simple, because you always have safeguards, right? But when you go on the street, there sometimes isn't a safeguard. You have to act very fast. You don't have your strobes with you. You have to think on the fly. And that's why we start, of course, with gear. Don't we love gear? Let me see, we have something in the chat. Okay, Raymond. Hey, Raymond, welcome. Now, the first thing, of course, gear. And don't we all love gear, right? Because gear, that's, well, it's expensive, but it's also a lot of fun. So what do you use? Well, yeah, that's the one that I'm using. The Sony 24-240. And now I hear a lot of you guys going, oh no, you are kidding. You're not doing this seriously, right? And maybe you already turned off YouTube after seeing this, but bear with me. There is a saying, and the saying I use all the time when I teach at, for example, photo clubs. Amateurs are really focused often on megapixels, petapixels, ultra pixels, micropixels, micro adjustments, Mark 1, Mark 2, because it's 1/0 of a second faster, primes versus zoom lenses, because zoom lenses are crap, of course, prime lenses are way better. And then you have the professionals. So you know what the professionals think about? Only one thing, getting the shot. And getting it as fast as possible, making sure that you can respond. Having a 24-240 is awesome. Is it the best lens on the world? Absolutely not. Do I hate the lens? Sometimes yes, for the very simple reason, it's slower. So I can't do, for example, a very fast moving subject. I tried birds with it and don't do it. But in all honesty, we had it with us on our trip to Johannesburg, and it made it possible to shoot from the car a wide-angle shot and immediately a zoomed-in shot, creating so many more creative options. And at that point, you need a lens that can do that. So in other words, if you are in the park of only using prime lenses, constantly switching those lenses, you will get dust on your sensor, you will damage your camera, at one point you will drop a lens or somebody steals your lens. When you have everything compact in one lens, it stays on the camera for the whole trip. And in all honesty, when I travel, I even do workshops with that lens for the very simple reason, it's on my camera, and normally I use a 24-70. Why not use this one, right? So it's not always about money, it's about utility, it's about what you do with it. And if you need that extra sharpness, hey, Topaz is also a great option, right? So another lens that I love to use is the Sigma 12-24. Now I still have that one on the A mount from Sony, so imagine how old that lens is for me, but I still use it for the very simple reason, it's a great extra toy lens. Now you might think toy lens, I don't mean it in a bad quality, because this lens is amazingly sharp. I even do concerts with VB Suryadi with the lens if I need a wide angle, so this is a great lens. It's a very expensive lens also. But why do I mean with toy lens? You can toy around with it. You can get stuff really large in the front and then moving it back using that distortion, and that's just so much fun to play with. So that's my toy lens to play around with. Now, the first thing, of course, is low angles. We're going to talk with this seminar in small parts. So we're going to do one topic about small angles, or sorry, in this case, low angles. We're going to do something about humor, and we're going to mix everything together and just connect it. So we're going to start with low angles. Now, when you photograph a road, you can do it like this, standing up. But the only thing that you see at that moment is a road. But what if you just drop your camera, don't drop your camera, but put your camera on the floor, use your flip-up screen, use f16 and just focus on infinity. You get a totally different look in your image. And that's what I love about low angles. Now, we also use low angles, of course, with a lot of our model photography. For the very simple reason, we call that the hero pose. If you shoot somebody from slightly below, they become bigger, they become taller, more majestic. So we call that the hero pose. When you shoot somebody from the top down, they become a little bit smaller. And well, that doesn't always look right with a model. And the same thing goes, of course, for your street and travel photography. Lower angles, in my opinion, rock. And of course, you don't have to follow exactly the road. And this is one of the things that frustrated me a little bit when I was on a photo club. If you do something symmetrical and you try to do it as good as possible, there's always somebody that goes like, hey, there's 1 millimeter off. And you go like, yeah, I know. So at one point I just decided, you know what, I'm not going to go for symmetry anymore. I'm just going to go against it. So I'm going to create stuff that is a little bit more, we call it in the Netherlands, wringen. It doesn't feel right, but it just moves you in a certain direction. And I think roads from a very low angle are really great for this. Same here, now I'm doing the symmetrical stuff. And there's always something where you go like, hey, it doesn't really fit in. You see it? And when you go here, it just gives me a different feel. Okay, now this is one of the things that I highly recommend doing at the start of your trip. For the very simple reason, when you travel with a photographer, we all know, right, that we have to stop a lot to take pictures. Now, at the first day of your holiday, your wife probably has no problems with it and goes like, look how cute he is sitting on the floor with his camera. Oh, watch out, Frank, a car is coming. After 7 days of stopping everywhere, having no time for yourself, but only for photography, maybe they don't hear the tram coming. So try to do this kind of stuff not or at the start of your holiday. And of course, most of the things that I tell you are tongue-in-cheek. But you probably guessed that, and a week is sitting there. Now, of course, sitting low on the floor gives you also great opportunities when you have depth in your image. Because sitting on the floor with a wide angle gives you that dimension. Yes, that's what I wanted to say. And especially in a town like San Francisco, where you have a lot of hills, it created a great shot to just sit on the floor and just shoot down. Or did I shoot up? You never know, right? And that's the cool thing about that wide angle. In this case, of course, we were shooting down. Same here, Route 66. And this is the part where you also learn to wait. And why wait? Well, I wanted the logo in there. I wanted to have a sunset. And I was just going like, yeah, that's great. But I also would have loved to have a train there. And the whole day, Anouk and I saw these trains coming by. And we were just going like, yeah, it would be great if there was a train in there. You know, the cool part is just wait for it. And at one point, and there you have the train and a car coming. So I think this shot is so much more interesting than this one. This is great, but we waited just a little bit longer and then you have the train in there and the car. And somehow this one just talks a little bit more to me. Now, low angles can also work great with wide angles when you have nothing interesting to shoot. Like, I was asked by the local nature club to do a workshop in the woods, and I was just wondering, why do you want me to do a workshop in the woods, right? Because I normally do model photography and fashion photography. But hey, no problem at all, we're going to do it. And it was all voluntarily, so I was going like, what's the worst that can happen? Well, the worst that could happen is that you end up in the rain in a forest that has absolutely nothing to shoot. No animals, nothing, only trees. And I was just going like, I do have to teach something, right? And I have to do this for 1 hour. And at one point it just struck me, like, why don't I do the same thing that I do sometimes with model photography to make those legs really long? And I just walked up to a tree, put my camera on 12mm and put it against the tree and just aimed it up. To my surprise, the images looked absolutely awesome. And I was just going like, hey, this is interesting because you can do this in a lot more situations. For example, with architecture. Or, for example, during a photo walk in Urk. And the cool thing is you can include stuff in the frame that actually places you on a location. For example, a flag in the back. Or maybe some backlighting. But also come closer to your subjects. Of course, I can shoot from a low angle some cows. And in all honesty, yeah, is this a great shot? Not really, right? But what if you go a little bit closer and you use your wide angle? Now it becomes a little bit more interesting. Or maybe you should come really close. Now I have to be honest with you guys, I'm not afraid of large animals. I actually was brought up on a rural area, so I grew up a little bit around larger animals. Still, don't come too close. This is something that even freaked me out a little bit because those animals are really big and you never know what they're going to do. But hey, for the photo ride, I hope my mom isn't watching. Let me put it that way. Also here, a tree. And in this case, the tree was, well, less interesting than the other one because there was less branches. And somehow I still love the wide angle effect. So even if something looks totally terrible, use a wide angle and use that toy perspective and it just becomes amazing. This is just some stuff that I shoot when mountain biking and actually on the iPhone on the wide angle setting. But when you start combining the very low angle with your wide angle and you go to a location that's more interesting, like for example New York, think about just sitting on the floor and just aiming that camera up. Look at this. Now you can include, for example, the flag. You can include the, I believe it's the Chrysler building, if I'm correct. Yes, I think. Yeah. Sorry if I messed something up. At this moment, you can also see that you can include the sun, just as discussed before. And that's the nice thing about that wide angle, you know, when you use compression, you are limiting your angle of view, meaning you always see where you point your camera towards. When you use a 12mm, you have so much area that you see in your camera. So when you have the sun, you can easily include that into your photo, as you can see here. And with a compression lens, first of all, you can't get in the whole sign, and getting the sun exactly in the place where you want, you have to move around a lot and be very lucky. With the wide angle lens, it's just a matter of just moving around a little bit. You can position the sun in more extreme angles. Great lens to try out. And of course, ask people. Street photography is also talking to people. And let's be honest, one of the most asked questions is, are you never afraid on the street that somebody will hurt you or angry at you? Guys, it's very simple. If in front of the mirror every morning you comb your mohawk, put in the paint and put in your bow into your nose and put in your big earrings, put on your Metallica t-shirt and you walk outside and a photographer asks you, hey dude, you look awesome, can I take your picture? You expect that, right? But if you just walk up to somebody that looks totally normal and you ask, can I take your picture? That's weird. So in other words, if you are a real street photographer, you are looking for the people that look a little bit different, that are interesting to shoot. Those people know. Do you really think you're the first guy that asked them? And then again, you walk up to somebody, hey dude, you look awesome, can I take your picture? What do you really expect? That they hit you because you tell them they look awesome? That would be the weirdest response ever, right? So the worst thing that can happen is no. Well, did you now have a heart attack or did you drop dead? No. Do be careful, however, to point your camera towards people when you don't ask. And that's something that can be very dangerous, especially in places like Los Angeles or even New York in the suburbs. Be a little bit careful with that. Now, I do have a trick. For example, if you're in a restroom, in a wagon of a train or metro or whatever. I know. Can you get me my phone, please?
My phone? Where is
Yeah, I don't know where my phone is at the moment. Can you look in? Let me just act like this is my phone. So, it's a remote control. Now, we all know that sometimes we have really interesting people in front of us. As a street photographer, we want to take a picture of those people, but maybe we are a little bit afraid to ask, right? So I come up with something and I call this the inversed selfie. Now, we all know that people love to take selfies of themselves, right? And they go like this, yeah, mom, great. But what now if you don't take a selfie and you just do this and you take a picture? Is that bad? Well, if you leave your strobe on, yes. Again, it depends on what you do with your images. And this is for me a very difficult part of street photography. If I shoot somebody on the street, I would love to have somebody that's interesting, but I would never photograph somebody to make them look awful or awkward or make people laugh. I want to make sure that I keep that person, let me put it this way, to their best, if you know what I mean. I'm not shooting people to hurt people. So, okay, with a photo camera, you see the pun, right? So, for me, that's a little bit of an area where I go, like, if I point my camera towards somebody, I really think they're interesting. Oh, thank you so very much. So, the inverse selfie is actually literally just pointing your camera, acting like you do, and just take the photo. And it also helps, of course, in a bus and in a train that you're a little bit closer to somebody, right? Just make sure your strobe is off. Okay. So let's continue. And again, some people will say, hey, that's totally wrong to take pictures of people on the street. And I 100% agree. And some people will go like, hey, you can shoot everything. And I 100% don't agree. I think there's a big gray area in between. And just figure out what fits for you. But don't judge somebody if they do it differently. Okay, so next shot. Compression is awesome. Oh, by the way, this guy I literally asked. I saw the the albums in front of the store. I loved it from a lower angle, and I saw him just looking through, and I said, hey, do you mind if I take a picture while you're going through the albums? And he was going like, yeah, sure, cool. Do you want me to sit like this? Do you want me? Okay. So I steered him a little bit, and well, as you can see, just ask. Okay, compression is awesome. Now, with the wide-angle lens, we extract everything. We make it distort. We make it look cool. We make it look a little bit toyish, right? With a compression lens, that's totally different. Now, what is a compression lens? A compression lens is more a longer lens. So, for example, a 70mm to 200 to 400. Every time you put something in front of your camera, it will change your angle of view. If you zoom, it will change your angle of view, all right? So, with a compression lens, you can have different levels of compression. For example, on 200mm, it compresses less than on 400mm. Logical, right? So when you do, for example, a crowded area, like in this case, it's King's Day in the Netherlands. Now, this is King's Day, and there are a lot of people there. But this was shot relatively wide angle. As you can see here, yeah, I can see there are a lot of people, but I don't get that feeling that I normally have in big crowds, a little bit claustrophobic, right? So what if we zoom in? Oh, wow, that's a lot more people, right? This is okay, and this becomes to be a little bit more claustrophobic, right? So what helps with claustrophobic? Concentrate on something, that's right. Do you see the kid? Yes. With street photography, I think it's important to always tell a story. Now, photography is, of course, unique moments in time that never come back again, but what makes an interesting photo? Now, do you remember all those slideshows that you have to go with through your parents and your grandparents from their holidays, and they were boring as can be? What if you see different images that tell stories, but also somebody that tells those stories? Now, of course, this is not my holiday that I show you, but I can tell you already, if I show you my holiday, there will be laughs, there will be interesting shots, and maybe somewhere there's something that's a little bit more boring, but I try to make it interesting. And you can't only make it interesting with stories. You have to use your camera and, of course, your camera lenses to create that story. And part of that storytelling is isolating subjects, but also creating lower or higher angles and using compression. Now, in this case, the first time we visited America, I was just stunned by how many signs there were. It was just insane. So I decided to go out from the hotel, took a 70mm and took a shot, went back to the hotel, showed it to Anna-Week, and the moment I showed it, I was already going like, yeah, this is not what I want. So I went back outside with a 400mm, and then I compressed the heck out of it, and I was going like, yeah, this is what I want. And as you can see here, it's just compressed. This is probably a mile long or something, and for us, it was just insane. You guys are probably used to it if you live there, but yeah, for us, we had to compress this to get the proper view. And there we go, that's storytelling. If we shoot this with a 12mm and you tell it to somebody, everything was filled up with signs, it's amazing, and you show that picture and people go like, yeah, I see a sign there all the way, yeah, I see it. But the thing is, our eyes zoom and our eyes focus. Now, when you talk with a lot of people, they tell you that the normal human eye sees 50mm, right? And from the start, I never agreed with that saying, for the very simple reason, when I look in the distance, I focus on the distance. When I look closer by, I focus on the sides, right? And everybody that does mountain biking knows, don't look in front because you will fall down. Look in front of you straight ahead because your peripheral vision will pick up everything on the bottom and will go this way, but never look in the front. So in other words, your eyes work totally different from a lens. And that means that in a photograph, we have to steer the viewer's eyes towards what we want to see. And we do that with compression, of course. And in this case, compression is used for storytelling. I saw all the signs because my eyes were zooming in. If I take the picture with a 50mm, the story isn't told the way that I see it. So in this case, I'm using compression to tell my story better. Okay, and don't fear the extreme. This was during daytime, but I'm using the sun as a strong backlight. I'm actually focusing on the sun with my exposure, and at that point it looks like nighttime, and I just love the way that it interacted with those light bulbs. Same here, sun in the back, underexposed, and giving me great shadows. Give it a little bit of a brownish tint, and there you go. And the sun in the back again, creating that detail in the nets. Always remember that when we are in the studio, we use shadows to create depth. But when we're on location, we sometimes forget it because we have that big softbox in the sky, everything is nice and soft, and as soon as you see hard shadows, maybe you run away or you go like, oh, I'm not going to shoot now. But find those shadows, find the extremes, get that sun in there, and just create images that are a little bit different. And as you can see here, it just works great. Also the reflection in the water. And again, I'm not a great street or travel photographer. I'm just sharing some tips from images that I personally like. Okay, bad conditions. Now, of course, everybody loves bad conditions or not. Do you go out in the rain and in the snow? If you say no, then you're probably not a professional street photographer, and I'm certainly not. But I love to go out in the rain, and you know why? In the rain, everything is different. We have reflections, we have colors that just are much more brighter. We have people that don't pay attention. We have people that use umbrellas in a different way. We have colors that jump out way more due to the reflections. So let's take a trip, put on your raincoat, put on your umbrella, and there we go into the rain. Brooklyn Bridge. Now this is part of something we're going to talk about a little bit later, talked about locals. Now, if you are a tourist, like we were the first time we went to New York, you probably book a tour or a cruise. The thing with the cruise was that we experienced it as something that was cool. And wow, look how close we are to the bridges. But as soon as we got friends in New York and they told us like, hey, go to Dumbo, down on the Manhattan Bridge, I believe, Annewiek? Yes, down on the Manhattan Bridge. That's the part where you see all the bridges and you go like, wow, wouldn't it be, hey, what is that boat doing there? And then a friend of mine went like, oh yeah, you just pay a few bucks. You go, oh, that would be awesome for you. I said, what? He said, just pay a few bucks, go on the boat over there and just zigzag all the way over Manhattan and just zigzag back and to your car. I cannot tell you, the cruise was way more expensive and we didn't get any good shots. The boat tour, for the few bucks, was awesome because we went under the bridges, something that you normally don't do. Now at that point it was raining cats and dogs, and the thing was, I just loved it because now I got pictures that are unique. Because of course it's great with sunlight, but when it's raining, it just gives you a totally different look on a city. As you can see here, for me, this is much more moody. Maybe make it black and white, add a lot of contrast, instant art. Oh, there we go, instant art. Umbrellas. You know what I mean? I just love stuff like this. And same here, the colors for me just really popped out. Now, not all these images are interesting, of course, but these are here to show you how those colors pop in the rain. Same here with the umbrella. And of course, I absolutely love this shot. That you think more about your dog than about your own. And isn't it awesome? Should all people be like that? I just love the yellow here and the iron, how do you call it? The iron brick building? No, whatever. It's something a little bit like that. And same here. How about the umbrella? You see, it's just small. It just caught my eye, and it caught my eye because it was red. I actually took the picture, and later on I looked at it going like, hey, that's weird. Also in the bus you can make great images, and this lady actually knew that I was shooting it, so don't worry. And also here, the lighthouse. Now, we went here with a friend. He lived in Boston, and he wanted me to show He wanted to show me the lighthouse. He said, "That's awesome. You can take great shots there." And then when we arrived, it was really bad weather. And he was going like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, dude. I'm so sorry. This is bad weather. I'm really, man, I feel bad." And I was just going like, no, man, I love it, because this is what a lighthouse is supposed to be. A lighthouse is there for safety, right? We want to make sure that the lighthouse keeps everybody safe. And everybody has images with this lighthouse with the blue backdrop. I have something unique. Well, I thought there were a lot of images that actually were shot in the rain, but for me it was way more interesting than having a blue sky, because that's the postcard image. This one is way more moody. And of course, using compression when it snows. Now, it can snow a lot in the Netherlands, but in this case, it didn't. But I still wanted to have the impression of snow. And the nice thing about compression is, if you compress, you literally compress everything together, also the depth. So if there are just a few flocks of snow, when you compress it, you actually create a denser snowfall. And that's actually what's happening here, because there wasn't that much snow. But thanks to compression, you don't need Photoshop, right? And again, the rain. For me, shooting through the car windows is always a challenge. And then seeing somebody crossing, taking no notice, just being soaked wet. Interesting. This was shot during a photo walk in Amsterdam. And again, here the reflections and how the colors pop at night during rainfall. It's something that I absolutely love to see. Look at this, look at the streets. Great. And of course, you can work a little bit with soft focus. In this case, of course, there's a little bit of fog on your lens. You can emulate it by just breathing on your lens a little bit. So it gives you a nice filter which you can shoot with. When you start, it looks very foggy, and then you just let it disappear a little bit and you shoot. We do the same trick a lot with model photography when we can't use a smoke machine, for example, on a stage, but we still wanted to show a little bit of an extra accent, and we just breathe on my lens. You see this whole fog creating, and then you take a shot, and it just looks great. And we do the same thing here on the street. It's very unpredictable, by the way, what will come out. Same here, just some images with the reflections and the colors. And these were all shot in Amsterdam during the photo walk. I think the Scott Kelby photo walk in 2004 or 5. Okay, wait for it and composition. Now, one of the things that Jay Micel told me, and that I always try to tell everybody, is find the stage and the players will come. It's actually not his advice, it's Robert Desaneaux, I found out, and he actually told me later. And what does it mean? It means that when I started with street and travel photography, I always felt rushed. For the very simple reason, we're only there for a week. I want to make sure that any week, of course, has a great time. And I want to make sure that I come home with a lot of images. So I have to compress everything in one moment. So what do? You run out, you start shooting, and you start looking everywhere. And you go like a hamster in a box. And you go, oh, wow, I want to shoot this. And in the end, you end up with some great shots. What Jay said was so striking. He said, find the stage and the players will come. And another thing that he said is, if you are going out looking for a girl in a red dress with a blue coat and a hat and a Dalmatian, what are the chances? I said in New York, pretty high. Okay, but what if you go out looking for a great lady with a Dalmatian? Well, the odds go up, right? But what if you just go out looking for a great lady? Odds go up even more. And now just go out and shoot whatever's interesting. And I think at that point, it just clicked for me. Find the stage and the players will come, and find something that's interesting. Now, in this case, I loved absolutely this beach house. I think it's from Baywatch, from my memory. But I thought, like, it would be great if we just had one of those floaters. I hope I pronounced that correctly, and I don't mean anything floating in your restroom, but the floater that they use in Baywatch, right? I was going like, yeah, this is great. Now, do you remember that I also talked to you guys about including stuff that you can know where you are with the wide angles? Do I know where I am now? Probably yes, because this is pretty much how I imagine America. But now I'm pretty sure where I am, right? Because I include the flag. The reason I'm telling you guys this is, a while ago, one of our models went to Miami for a photo shoot. And she came back and she was very, very proud. She went like, Frank, I went all the way to Miami and I got these really great shots on the beach. And I was going like, that's awesome, show me. And I was just going through and they were great images on the beach. Don't get me wrong, awesome. But I was just going like, why did you went all the way to Miami? And she became a little bit mad at me. She was going like, can't you be happy for me that I have these great images? I said, don't get me wrong, I love those images, but I can shoot them here. Without any doubt, if I just put some sand in the studio, I can even shoot them. Why didn't you include some palm trees or a lifeguard's house or an American flag? In the end, she still didn't get it and she thought that I wasn't happy with the shots. But when you do a photo shoot, always try to include something that tells the story of where you are. In the case of a model photo, it can be indeed an American flag or a palm tree or a lifeguard house, something that connects you to a story, or in other words, a location. In this case, I almost had it. And then I was going like, wouldn't it be great if there were lifeguards there? I just waited for a few seconds and nothing happened. So I sent Anouk into the ocean and I said, scream. And yeah, there we go. Now they came out, put the floater and rescued Anouk. I'm just kidding, of course. We actually wanted to turn around and then at one point they just came out and I turned around and took the shot. It was very lucky. But you could have waited. Okay, same thing here. Lower angle, tell the story and think about composition. When I shoot something like this, yeah, no, it's a McDonald's sign. What's interesting about a McDonald's sign? Well, what if I do it like this? this becomes way more interesting, but do you realize it was shot at the same time? Now, imagine this. This looks nothing like this shot, right? Now, sometimes you are a little bit early for a sunset or a little bit late for a sun up, and all those nice saturated colors are gone in the sky. Do you know that the color has 3 coordinates? I always tell you guys this: hue, saturation, and luminance. Did you know that if you lower the luminance of a color, the saturation pops up? Right, that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm actually intentionally underexposing my shot. Look at the sun, clear giveaway, because it doesn't blow out, it's a ball. And because I'm underexposing my shot, all the colors pop a lot more. If you look at the first shot, you can see that it's actually there. See in the back, you see the sun, you see it's reddish, but I was just a little bit too late. And here I just fixed that. Okay, same here. This was shot in a theme park and not that interesting, right? But what if I place a light behind it and the American flag? Now I know exactly in which country I am, and I make the shot a little bit more interesting. Same here. I love this shot. It's a great shot. It tells a great story, right? I love the lady there with her bags, with her shoes. I love the yellow caps. I love the crossroad. But somehow it brings me totally into that set. I know I'm in New York. I have everything there that I like. But the image doesn't really tell the story that I want it to tell. Because what is the story that I want to tell? Everybody that's been to New York knows you don't walk in New York in flip-flops. You have walking shoes, because if you don't wear walking shoes, well, your feet will look like this. And that's the difference between just shooting it like I like it or going a little bit more close. By going a little bit more close and choosing your composition differently, you can draw your viewer into the story. Instead of just showing a scene, I'm now telling the story. And this makes way more fun when you're explaining this during a photo showing of your holiday shots. Your friends will like you for it. Same here, angle and composition. Now, I love this. I believe it was in Sweden or Norway. I just like this, and I got this huge Vikings vibe. And I was going like, wow, this is great. Let's take a shot with the crosses in the front and the church in the back. But somehow, no. So, grab that wide angle. Now, look at this. The church looks way further away, right? Look at this. The church is in front. The church is far away. Church is in front, far away. And that's the thing about wide angle and about compression. If you use a 24 to 240, you can play around with all those different settings. And it's not just getting stuff closer and getting stuff further away. It's about so much more. It's about extending your total creativity by using a lens that has all those options. And of course, add a little bit of vignette and a little bit of noise, overexpose it, and there you go. You have your vibey shot. At least I thought it was pretty cool. Also, framing is important. Now, this is nice. I don't know. I think this is nicer because it's framed. Now, this is something that I'm still learning myself, and I'm always looking for stuff that I can place in the sides or make it a little bit more interesting. And the cool thing is, and also the frustrating part for me, with model photography, I don't even think about it. I just do it. And I found out that with nature photography, like when I look at this shot, I go like, yeah, I got it nicely framed. And then I look again and I go like, yeah, no, I do miss some stuff. And yeah, now it's better. You see, and again, I'm using that wide angle to create that depth in my shot. Again, this is something I'm always struggling with nature, and somehow in model photography, it just flows. And it goes to show that not all photography is equal and can be really difficult. Now, in this case, this was shot with my iPhone, and I just liked that all those little mushrooms were just covered by a little bit of green. And in this case, I just used the green as framing. And you can also use something in your architecture, for example, a boring looking street. If you have a little bit of framing, it can be more interesting. Now, this was one of the shots that I really liked from our photo walk in Urk. And I've been there a gazillion times, and this shot I never took. And I looked at it and I was going like, yeah, I like how the stairs is going up, and I like that whole angle going up. You are literally, as a viewer, just pushed towards the lighthouse. And then I was just going like, but it's also boring. When you place something in the front, it can happen that it draws the attention, but it can also give you much more depth and also another anchor point to look at. So look what happens when we use the grass in the front. Now you decide which one is better. I think this one is more interesting, But I also had a lot of people going like, no, I like this one more because of the angles, of the way that you are looking into your shot. And I agree actually with both a little bit, but my preference is this one. Same here. What is the framing? What is actually what you're seeing? Well, what you're seeing is the reflection in the water of the trees. And I used literally a tree to make sure that you knew we're in the forest and make the connection with the reflection. Because if I leave the tree out, you just look at something that's very abstract. And that can be cool, but by including the tree, you now have a little bit of an anchor going like, hey, maybe it's a forest in the reflection in the water. So it can help with storytelling. Also keep your eye out for detail. A subway station with I just couldn't resist. Is it a great shot? Absolutely not, but it can be a great opener for your travel vlog, for example. Yeah? So instead of just showing stuff of New Jersey where you visited, why not open up with a subway? And yeah, so we took the subway and you don't say anything. You go like, hey guys, so we went with the subway, you show this image and literally somebody will start laughing. And at that point you already got your great start of your evening. If people still do photo shows, by the way. I don't know. This I loved during Queen's Day, or King's Day. Now, there's one kid playing, and one kid, I will translate it for you guys shortly. One kid is just laying in bed because his mom said, you can't earn money sleeping. And he said, you want to bet? And during King's Day, I can. And he just put his bed outside with a big sign. And he literally says like, yeah, I can earn money while sleeping, while his brother is just playing his instrument and gets money for that. Keep looking at that stuff. Also during King's Day, people always dress up, so I always keep looking for people and interesting stuff. Also the orange, of course, is a color you see a lot during King's Day. Also during my travels, of course, we went to Los Angeles, and I just love this guy. Somehow I saw him 2 or 3 times, and at one point I just aimed my camera at him and I just shot him. I went over to him and said, what are you doing the whole day? And he is just, the whole day is just cleaning the stars. I don't know if he's still doing it. That was, I think, 15 years ago. Very nice guy to talk to, and yeah, I just took an image. And I thought it was interesting because everything there is luxurious. Everything walks, everything is shiny, and you think that it just happens. And then you see somebody just sitting on the floor, totally out of just cleaning the stuff. And you go like, this is actually a little bit weird, right? Cleaning the stars. This is not my sharpest image, but I saw it and I just had to shoot it. The pink in the clothing, the finger just pointing. How many times in your life do you see something like this? Well, I never saw it again. So I'm very lucky that I shot it. Also here, just redesign yourself. Those are the things that I love to shoot. And this is not even the humor part. People can do weird stuff or drive on weird vehicles. Also something I love to shoot. And this is one of the parts, if you look very closely, during, well, zebras, or in other words, crossings. During crossings, people don't pay attention. They just walk. And if you sit down, 1, you have a lower angle, and 2, at one point you just blend in. And you can just sit there for an hour and shoot the most amazing images. And for me, it's always fun at crossroads or zebras, just depending on how you call them. And the thing is, people are totally concentrating on crossing the road, don't pay any attention to the photographer. And because you're on a lower angle, you can also use that 12mm and just wait for people to almost walk over your camera and then take that shot. Some great images. I don't have them in here, but I took a lot with 12mm where people just almost walked over the camera and they just look great. Now, on most of cameras, you have a panoramic mode. Shooting something in panoramic mode gives you a totally different look on your images. It can totally bring you back to that area because our eyes look way wider than we can ever capture on a photo. Now, there is one tip I want to give you guys. Shoot panoramic modes on your phone, but also shoot them on your mirrorless camera or your DSLR. Now, do you sometimes also find it frustrating to find out where you started your panoramic and where you ended it? That was for me the biggest frustration and why I hardly ever shot panoramics with my phone, with my camera. Because it's easy, right? Click, 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 and you have 60, 60, 60, 60, 60 megapixels. That's awesome. That's way better than your iPhone, which delivers a JPEG file. Come on, I want 60 megapixel RAW files to zoom in. So why didn't I shoot it? Well, most of the time I forgot, or I just thought like, forget about it. And then I started doing the following. Every time when I start a panoramic, I will do this. And when I end it, I will do this. Meaning the first shot will have my finger in it, and then I start my panoramic, and when I'm done I have 2 fingers. So every time when I look in Lightroom and I see 1 finger, I know that's the start of a panoramic shot. Then I see 2 fingers, that's the end of the panoramic shot. And you know why? Because sometimes you want to have the panoramic, but you also want to take shots in that same location, and then you just mess it up, you don't remember, and you go like, you know what, forget about it. By using the finger trick, it's very easy. You have your panoramics. Now later, of course, in Lightroom, select those panoramic shots, stack them together and delete the 2 fingers if you want to save space on your hard drive. But panoramics, again, I absolutely love them. And look for it. What do I mean with look for it? Find local people who know the fun parts to shoot. The things that normal people may or may not look are the most interesting images. Like, for example, the Apple Store in New York. You can shoot it from the outside because it's a really interesting building. But what if you go inside and shoot it up with your wide angle? Or maybe include the Apple logo and somebody standing there. I'm very lucky that she was there because she gives scale, or him. But maybe also stand underneath, aim your camera up. I just hated that the Apple logo wasn't 100% visible. So by going a little bit back, I still see all the buildings and I see the Apple logo. And I loved that from this side, the sun just hit that building and created those stripes on the Apple logo. For me, these shots are absolutely great. And maybe for you they go like, Frank, they're boring. But, you know, that varies per person. Now, I'm not the kind of guy that normally will switch his camera like this. I believe they call it the Dutch angle. Well, this is a very, very crooked Dutch angle. But in this case, I don't know why I did it, but it just felt right. And every time when I look at this image, I go like, yeah, it is interesting. And I still can't put my finger on it. Why? I think because it creates the perfect triangle to the corner with the apple on the bottom and that red light. I don't know. Cool places. When you ever visit Las Vegas, make sure you go to the Heart Attack Grill. Everything there is designed for a heart attack. You get really bad food. I asked for a Diet Coke and they almost kicked me out. So for now, I'm going to take a sip. Now, when you want to go into the Heart Attack Grill and you want a free meal, all you have to do is be 350 lbs. So I didn't get a free meal. Now, the cool thing about it is if you don't eat your meal, they spank you. And this is the totally mind twister one. Let's say you get your free meal because you are 350 lbs and you want a second meal. You have to weigh in again. So somehow they think it's possible that you eat and lose weight. I wish that was true. That would be awesome, right? But inside, and this is why I went there. I didn't went there to eat because, although you wouldn't guess it, I do really like not to eat fast food. But in this case, I just couldn't resist because they told me everybody's wearing aprons, every poster you see there, every movie you imagine, they created it into something that has to do with nasty food and fast food. And I have to see it just as an attraction. As you can see here, a lot of people just having a lot of fun. When you add alcohol to the equation, by the way, you get like a dripper. I don't know how you call it, but what you get in the hospital. And everybody's dressed up like doctors. It's just insane. And look at the posters in the back. You can see that everything has that twist with bad food. Okay, I have a question. Let me see. Justin. Frank, do you have a favorite street photography lens? I may have missed it because I got in late. Yes, Justin, I do. The 24-240 from Sony, because it covers everything from compression to wide. And it's a great lens. It's not cheap, but it's great. And it's not the fastest, by the way, so I'm not going to tell you that's the great lens, sell everything else, but as a street and travel photography lens, that's my main choice. And I use the Sigma 12-24, which I love for the wide angle. I always call that my toy lens, while in actually, it's a very expensive lens, but I just love the way that you can toy around with it. Okay, Amityville. Now, I'm a huge fan of horror movies, and one of the horror movies that I loved, also the story behind it, is of course Amityville. So when you're visiting New York, New Jersey, or whatever, for me, I just wanted to visit Amityville. And this is also where you can start telling stories. Like, for example, did you know that the address of Ocean Drive is different in the book than in reality and also in the movie? They did it to protect the owners. Now, the funny story I can tell you about this is that if you want to be really, really low key, right? And you go through a road And all the houses are the same. Or the same, they are all different, but they look the same, right? They have this open garden, they have this beautiful home, they have these toys in the garden and whatnot more. Now, if you don't want your house to jump out and you want people to think like, hey, Ocean Drive doesn't look right, okay, let's go. Why do you put fences around your house? Don't look, don't do this. And this is actually what really caught my eyes about the Amityville house, because you immediately recognize it. It's the only house in that area with all the fences around and all the signs, don't come in there. And trust me, I get it, because people can be really mad and strange. We just took some shots from the back. And that's because that a continental building, I believe they call it. So that's when we went to the other side, and that gave us a little bit more of a look. And do I see a ghost over there? No. And what if you're not inspired? Well, of course, you can always try to do some stuff that is interesting and gets your juices flowing, right? For me, it means sometimes just going to a parking garage, walking around, and just seeing like, hey, maybe I can just put my camera low again. Hey, I like that angle. And before you know it, you start looking for stuff. Oh, that angle there is nice. Maybe you make an angle like that. And before you know it, you find your passion for photography again. Or maybe, well, you want to earn a shitload of money, and I heard that one $99 store image was sold for a few million. So I thought, let's try that also. And if somebody wants to buy it, I'm open for suggestions. Anything above 100,000 maybe? Lower? I don't know. It's a $99 store, so it should be a lot of money, right? It's not a banana. Same here, laundromats. And sometimes they're really disgusting and gore. And I was just going like, I love the whole look. Use a filter that enhances that a little bit. And you go like, yeah, that's interesting to photograph. And during laundromats, you also see funny stuff. And a 125 LBS giant washer. Like for us, I never saw anything like that being used by normal people. But hey, why not? And again here, it's if you don't know how we look in our culture at something, some images can be boring and some images can really trigger you like, yeah, that's how I imagine that. And that's for me a little bit like, I don't see this stuff all the time. And for me, when I shoot something like this, that gets me more creative and gets me also when I'm on the street more into like, hey, I see that detail, I'd like to try that. And if you can find something that's boring and make it interesting, hey, you got a great challenge. Also hotels, because of the repeating patterns. Hotels can be awesome for repeating patterns. Also the boat, for example, to the UK with those long corridors. I love shooting there. And Red Room, of course. If you don't know what I mean, The Shining, of course. It gives me a big vibe here. I see already the kid with the triangle of a tricycle riding around. No, I don't want to go there anymore. Same here, just shooting the hotel lobby. Okay, humor in shots. This is the part that I love to talk about, and also the part that I think you guys are going to get a great kick out. Humor can be just stuff that you see. And in this case, a dog on a skateboard that's totally remote controlled. Yeah, it's funny, but it's not really triggering me. I want to have more of a story in there. Like, for example, do you also hate it when everybody steals your bed at the beach? Well, hire those two, and nobody will again. This is the stuff, by the way, I didn't Photoshop anything of this. This is literally shooting it, and after that, the moment is gone very quickly, so always have your camera ready. Burgers and dogs. I don't know. I get what he's trying to say, but somehow, with all the stuff going on in America, they're eating the cats and the dogs. Maybe they should change their sign, I don't know. Or if you have a really tasty dog, does it maybe come because he drinks decaf instead of the other stuff? You don't know, right? And maybe this one will not tell you a lot because this one isn't that interesting. It's an old hotel, right? It doesn't tell you a story. It won't make your audience laugh. But this one will, because the hotel is out of business. And why do you think that is? For everybody that speaks English, they go like, yeah, I know, bad hotel, right? For us in the Netherlands, bad hotel doesn't mean bad hotel. It means bath hotel. In other words, near the beach, right? But somehow I don't think when you book a hotel and you are from England or an English-speaking country and you can book a hotel between Let's say the hotel Flowers at the Beach or Bad Hotel. Which one would you book? I think the Flowers at the Beach, right? And not the Bad Hotel. So including something that tells the story a little bit more funny can create something that's boring more interesting. Like for example here, I don't think this is the point, but hey, I will shoot anything, right? Wi-Fi here? Yeah, really? Or maybe you're really tired and you have to really recharge. I beg for life. The girl behind the counter actually asked me like, hey, can I ask you why you're shooting that? I said, yeah, sure. And I showed it to her and she said, damn, that's funny. So sometimes it's a play on words. Sometimes you have to rearrange the bags just a little bit. I think in this case, I rearranged the bag just a little bit. Not in Photoshop on the set, by the way. Also, sometimes people just write stuff like breakfast or how about this bloody good orders. These are a little bit more subtle, but I just like them. Or how about this one? Is that a coincidence or divine intervention? I don't know. I let you guys decide. And remember this one. It's great to be terrible, you know. And when you see this in a store, you might not get it right if you're not from that area. And I didn't get it too, unless, well, they explained it to me. And I will get back to that later. Now, this is something that when you are experiencing it, it's really funny because what he told me, like, I was kind of like, what the hell is that? What does that mean? Is that something that we don't know? Because, well, I never saw something like this. He said, oh, no, it's very simple. He said, if you skateboard and you jump here, you can break your legs. I was kind of like, excuse me? He said, yeah, if you jump here, you can break your legs. I said, you can break your legs anyway. I said, yeah, fun, right? So when I tell that story, it's funny. But when I just show you the image, it isn't funny at all. Because you just see an image of somebody that you go like, wow. So do remember when you are taking images and you don't tell the story has to be in the images. I did a portfolio review a few years ago, and there was great portfolio, by the way. 9 images, awesome images. And there was this one image of a mailbox, just a wooden mailbox. And I went like, I wouldn't include that one. You have a great portfolio, why that mailbox? And he said, Frank, that mailbox will never leave my portfolio. And I said, why not? He said, because that's the last wooden mailbox in the UK. And maybe I was a little bit harsh at that point. I said, I don't give a crap. Maybe it's the last mailbox in the universe. I don't care. Because it's a boring shot. It's normal lighting. And I just see a wooden mailbox. It doesn't tell me anything. And he went, but I just told you, it's the last mailbox. I can't see that in the image. So unless you have that in your stories, like in this case, I can tell the story, then it's funny or interesting or maybe even shocking. But if you can't tell the story has to be told by, well, the photos. And sometimes that can be subtle. And sometimes you can also trigger a little bit the intelligence of your audience, like I'm doing now. Because I'm really thirsty. I'm going to give you a few seconds to figure out what's going on here. And again, this is not Photoshop, this is real. In essence, this actually made, I believe, national news in, I believe this was in Denmark. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. Okay, guys, you already know what's wrong? No? Okay, let me show you this one. Do you now see what's wrong? Let me put it this way. If you put your boat on the front one, the next day you will still have a boat. If you put your boat on any of the other ones, good luck finding your boat somewhere in the water because they're all turned around. And of course, sometimes you even don't have to explain something like the thieves are outside, the police is inside, right? Funny. This one needs a story. We were walking around the desert for hours. And then at one point you see something like this. And at that point, for example, you can tell your people like, are you thirsty too? And that's time for a break to get something to drink, for example, right? Same here. Read what's on the boxes. The image itself is already telling a story of somebody that's laying there, sleeping. But if you add to it new home and you make the joke like, yeah, I don't know, I would have probably made my bedroom somewhere else. Or maybe when you just roll out of bed, you immediately are washed because you fall in the water. So sometimes the story can be told by just looking at the image. The image can be interesting, or you can make it more funny by telling a joke about it. Now, in this case, I played with words and, of course, the locations. McDonald's, and do you see terribles? Yeah. Well, if you drive around, it's even funnier because now you get terrible McDonald's. I'm pretty sure, and I hope I don't offend anybody by this, I think these were stoners, without any doubt. Sitting on a hotel, or, sorry, in a bedroom going like, hey, dude, you know what would be funny? Yeah, tell me. If we would call a company Terribles, and you know why? Because every time we place it next to another company, it's actually a terrible company. Only these guys actually did it. For us as photographers, it's great, right? Okay, closing thoughts. You can go to the bottom of the ocean to take great shots. Or you can do it from a submarine, like I did here. And yeah, I don't like submarines in all honesty, but when you go in there with 10 tourists and you don't go that deep, is the image less interesting? No, of course not. It's still a great image, but you don't have to risk your life for it. This shot is very important for me, not just because I'm on a mountain, but because the story about it. And I do want to tell the story. It's not a long story. We were visiting Norway, and somebody told me, I can bring you to a beautiful location where you can see a glacier, where you can see water, where you can see literally God's creation in its best. Well, a lot of people told me that, and most of the times they are pretty right, and sometimes it's a big disappointment. This was awesome. The first thing was, we are not mountain climbers. So now it's not like Mission Impossible mountain climbing, but it was a steep climb and we are just not used to that, especially with the air. We live under the sea level. This is high above. So yeah, we got pretty tired. And he just kept going like, no, you don't have to go all the way to the top. Just go till here and just go till there. Now just a little bit further. And before we knew it, we were standing on the top, as you can see here. And we were literally standing there with 3 people, and he just took out his chocolate with the rules of the mountain, telling us everything about it. So he already set the mood. Now, at that point, I made the biggest mistake a photographer can make. And I was totally overwhelmed by the situation. Do you ever experienced that you took a shot where you knew for sure this is the National Geographic Prize winner? Nobody will ever critique this shot because this is great, this is awesome. You are totally satisfied. You put your camera in your bag, you enjoy the nature, and then you go back to your hotel room, you open up your card and you go like, yeah, and look, this is a great shot. And you just go through your images and you go like, is this a time delusion or something? Because I see the time, but I don't see that great shot. And then you look closely and you go like, it does look like the location where we were, but I don't get that feeling. And that's the thing. Sometimes we are so overwhelmed by what we see that we don't focus on the things that are important anymore for our photography. For me, it meant that most of my shots from that location are terrible. Luckily, I also was smart enough to use some images where I go like, it won't work, but I will just zoom in. You know, the funny part is, those images were the best because the wide angle just couldn't capture what I saw at that moment. The zoomed in images, those were awesome because those were also the details where I looked around to go like, look at that's awesome, look at that. And those are the remembrance. And the wide angle shots, it just didn't work. I took a panoramic shot, didn't work because it didn't give me that sensation of being on that mountain, having the wind in my hair, and at that moment seeing that. It was just too big. So sometimes compress, take stuff out, and take the great combination shots. And at that point, if you combine everything, and I hope some of the tips will help you out that I gave you today, you will get better shots. And always have your camera ready. A double rainbow is of course something that we sometimes see, but this was shot actually from our RV, believe it or not. I was just sitting, waiting for dinner, and the double rainbow appeared. And you know what? We always have a camera with us. In this case, luckily the Sony, and in other cases, program your button of your phone. Especially with their iPhone, they now have this quick button on the Pros, or the Max, I don't know how to call it. And you just press this and it immediately opens up your camera. Program something that you can shoot fast. Most of the things that are really interesting are gone in a second, or maybe even less. Even less, you know what I mean, right? It goes really fast. Make sure that you always have something with you to shoot. You can better have a great shot with your iPhone than no shot at all. Of course, we all would love to do it with a prime and make it great in lighting, but sometimes you don't have that time. Always make sure that you have a device ready where you can take a shot immediately. even if it's not the best shot. And of course, it's always more fun to do stuff together. In this case, I always travel with Anna Week. And why? Because it just clicks, and you know that traveling with your photography buddy is always more interesting because at that point you see things differently. Now, Anna Week isn't really into photography, but she most of the time just gives me tips like, hey, Frank, did you see that one? Because I'm often a little bit too focused on what I see. And Anna Week just sees different stuff, and I go, oh, that's also interesting, and shoot it. And she's luckily very, very patient with me. So, and she's not even sitting here anymore. So I really mean that. Okay, so guys, I hope you enjoyed our street and travel photography seminar. If you want to have more information about my work, please visit frankdorov.com and, of course, our YouTube channel. Now, of course, we also have a Patreon, and Patreon is really nice because at Patreon we do portfolio reviews. And you also can send in images just into the group, and the group and me, of course, will look at it and give you some advice. And Patreon is only $1 a month, or you can give more, of course. If you want personalized portfolio reviews, you can do more. And starting in January, and this is why I want a little bit more attention for this, starting in January, every month, everybody in Patreon can send in one image, and I'm going to make a combined video in which I review those images. And I also do a retouch for some of those images, starting from the button and just giving it my own look and feel, using the software that also the guys in Patreon, of course, use. I'm not going to use any extensive plugins or whatever. I'm just going to use standard Photoshop and Lightroom, and maybe a little bit of Luminar, for example, because, well, that's very affordable and a lot of people already own that. So make sure you join our Patreon. I think you're going to get a lot out of it, and it's a lot of fun. Next week we have another digital classroom, and the next week, because this one is actually, because I lost my voice for almost a month, so I had to do this one as a catch-up. Next week we have the mayonnaise, and that's actually the retouching one. I'm going to take some of my favorite shots in both model photography and street and travel photography, and in a 1 hour, that's going to be a little bit shorter, but knowing me, it will probably be longer, I'm going to show you how I retouch those images from the raw file all the way to the end result. So I think that one is going to be interesting too. Annemiek, do you have some news that you want to share?
Yeah, the next one is probably going to be a live shoot again.
No, the next one is going to be, in January, yes.
With the Lindsay Adler projector.
Yeah, we had a great idea. During the workshops, we always try to do different stuff and, of course, challenge myself with lighting. And one of the things that I love to use is the Lindsay Adler Gobo projector from Westcott. So we decided it would be a lot of fun to show you guys actually what you can do with a Gobo projector. You can use it as your backdrop. You can use it as your main light. You can add some color to it. You can work with different lenses. And because we are already in the 10th season, we've done so many live shoots. Next year, we want to do something special with every episode. So we're going to work more with teams, or just going to show you, hey, the model is coming in. We're just going to have fun in the studio. Guys, what do you want me to do? So we're going to do it more interactive with you guys. And if there's nobody online to give any directions, we're just going to figure something out, and we're going to make it more interesting. So it's going to be way more on the creative part and also on using gear in a different way, like, for example, the Gobo projector. I would like to thank you guys so very much for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Smash the like and bell notification button, of course, because a lot of you guys aren't subscribed, and it really helps the channel out. If you want to support our channel, of course, you can always have a YouTube subscription. When you do the YouTube subscription, also drop me an email, because all the guys in the YouTube subscription, I also add to the Patreon group on Facebook. So in essence, you get best of both worlds. How about that? Guys, thank you so very much for watching, and I see you again next time.